everybody. Welcome back to my workshop and welcome back to my garage. This is video number 5 in my Pango Music Headless Guitar Kit build. And this video we're going to be covering final assembly. As a reminder, this video is sponsored by Pango Music. They were kind enough to send me the kit to do the review on. And for that I want to say thank you very much. It's been an absolute great kit to build. What I'm going to do right now is just kind of give you a rundown on the amount of time that I've spent with the guitar building it, and also the monetary outlay that you could expect when you're building this guitar. The price of the kit is $199 for this kit, and there's a link down below in the description to the Pango Music website where you can get a list of all their kits. Shipping is going to be around $25 to $30, so let's say $25. So right now I'm at $224, and that's just to get the kit delivered to your door, which isn't bad at all, especially considering the quality of the kit. To do the top, I use Angelus leather dies. These dies are $5.05, and that's for a 3-ounce bottle. I used 4 different colors, so that's $20.20. The sanding sealer, again, that can was about $12 from Mohawk, so I'm at $244 after the dye. After $12 for the sanding sealer, I'm at $256. And then the clear coat that I used, I bought from Ace Hardware, and that was $8 for the can. So that's a total of $264 to get the kit and all the materials needed to build it. So, time-wise, what did it take me to build this guitar? To do the unboxing and the initial fit test took about 2 hours. I spent about another hour doing the bridge placement. I spent about 5 hours sanding. So right now I'm up to about 8 hours. It took about an hour to do the dyed finish on the top, so I'm up to 9 hours. Then it took about an hour per application of clear coat. So for the neck and the body, that was an hour, so I'm at 10. And then a second application on the body put me up to 11. And then it was about 2 hours of assembly time, so that put me up to about 13 hours. And about another hour for setup, so about 14 hours. There is some downtime associated in there with that though, so some times that you have to consider. After you apply the dye, you need to allow at least 24 hours for that dye to dry. After I applied the sanding sealer, that was another 24 hours for that to dry before I sanded it. When I applied the finish, that was another 24 hours to dry before I sanded it. Applied the second coat, another 24 hours to dry. Depending on how many coats of clear, how many coats of clear you do on it, how you do your dye finish or whatnot, you're looking at about 4 to 5 days of downtime while you wait for the other steps to happen. So that's not bad at all. About 14 hours of hands-on time, allowing with another 5 days of downtime in there. The kit actually went together pretty quick, and overall I'm very impressed with what I've got out of it. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, the kit only came in weighing at 5.15 pounds, which is absolutely great. It's really nice weight for that kit. So let's get rolling with the video and see what we've done for final assembly. So what we're getting ready to do now is we're going to start with final assembly. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and get this neck piece, the string retainer on the neck, put in, because that's pretty straightforward. All right, there we go. There's the headpiece on. That's sitting nice and flush. The next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and get the bridge mounted on the guitar. We're going to have to take the bridge back apart to get access to the 4 mount screws that are up underneath there. Before I put it back together, I'll show you how these saddles work as far as adjusting for string radius. The way this saddle is going to adjust, you can see here that there's a half moon on the back side of this, and there's 2 set screws on the back of the saddle. The one on the left here, that's the lock screw. So you unlock that one, and what that does is that allows this other one to be adjusted. You can see that that made it further in. Bring it the other way. And that brings it more this way, thus lowering or raising this. Let's see if I can see how we got the movement there now. And then once you get the action set to where you want it, you lock this tumbler back down, and that's going to hold your action set. And then after that, we'll go through and adjust intonation because you've got the slide here where it slides back and forth in the saddle. All right, so now that I've got the saddles off the bridge, I can get access to all 4 of my holes. This small holes here, that's where our saddle set screws slip back into, and you can see it's already kind of compensated for that because your E string and your G string are going to be further back than what your B and your E or your A and your D string are. So it's already kind of set up like that to allow for that adjustment for it to be further back up with the saddles. All right, so before we put the bridge in, we want to put this ground wire in. So basically what I've done is I've just stripped the end off the wire, and I'm going to kind of flay these out just a little bit. And then, if you remember, we drilled this hole in the body right here. It's just going to allow that wire to go down through. We'll feed this wire into the pickup cavity. Because we know the bridge is covering this, we can lay these wires down lay them out a little bit. That way it gets good contact with the bridge. See if you can see that there where I've got the wire spread out. And then the wire running into the control cavity here. And this is basically, this is just to ground the bridge and ground the strings to the rest of the electronics. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and drop the saddles back into the spots, get the saddles reinstalled. Okay, here we are with all the saddles installed. And you can see I haven't set the set screws yet, and I can move the saddles front to back. So that's going to leave me plenty of room for intonation. The next step is let's go ahead and get the neck installed, because what that's going to allow me to do is that's going to allow me to lay a string down on each side to make sure that my pickup alignment is right so I can drill and mount my pickups. So what I'm doing is just running all 4 screws down just prior to touching the ferrule. That way I've got them all down to a certain level, and then I'll go through and I'll tighten them. And I think it's the mechanic in me, I always tend to tighten in a cross pattern. So I'll go from tight, 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 tight. And I won't tighten one all the way. What I'll do is I'll get them all run down to about the same distance. And then I'll just, each screw I'll turn until it snugs. And then I'll move to the next one, you know, as it mates the surface. And then right there, I can start to feel resistance. There, there, and there. And now what I'll do is I just want to check, make sure it's seated. Check in the front. That looks good along there as well. Distance is the same. No gaps at the side. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a couple strings on, the high E and the low E. I'm going to run them down into the bridge. That way I can get my pickups oriented on where the pickups are going to go. And now the bridge pickup. So what I'm going to do with the pickups in the position, I'm going to go ahead and just mark the holes. And the reason why I'm marking the holes is because I'm actually going to pull the pickups back out to drill the holes. Especially this hole right here, because all the wires are running right in a channel below there. So I want to make sure that when I drill that hole, I don't go into the wires. And just being careful to drill straight. I've got my starting points. Now we do have to worry about drilling through here when we drill for the centers. So what we want to do is first I want to measure my body. So my body is 1.6 inches thick total. And then this pickup cavity is 0.8 inches. So this already goes down half the distance. I'm going to go 0.6 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a depth stop. I'm going to use some tape and set a depth stop on my drill bit. I don't want it to go any further than 6. That way I know as I drill down, I can drill down that far, and as this tape hits the bottom of the cavity, I'll know that I've gone to the depth that I want to go to. So now that we've got the holes drilled for our pickups, let's go ahead and get them mounted in the guitar. When you're positioning your pickups, you can see that the pickup ring is a little bit thicker on this side than it is on this side. So this side is the one that's going to go up onto the neck. Normally, these have 2 slugs in them. Normally what you'll do is normally the pickup, one side will have screws, the other side will have slugs. The screw side on the neck will go closest to the neck, and the screw side in the bridge position will go closer to the bridge. So normally what will happen is these will be the north pole, or excuse me, south pole was the screw side, south pole is the screw side. So your south poles are pointing out, your northern poles are pointing in. With these pickups, what I've got is I've got my polarity tester, and that's the south side there, so that's going to be side close to the bridge. That's the north side, so that's going to be in the middle. Again, this is the south side, so that's going to be closest to the neck. Another way you can do, if you don't have a tester like this, is you can just take a magnet that you know has the north and the south on it and put it onto the poles, and if it opposes, like if you have the north end and you're trying to put it on this magnet, if the north end opposes here, that means that's the north poles. If it drops down in and magnetizes to it, that means that's the south poles. Okay? So just kind of a quick overview on what you can do with your pickups. And what I actually did is I went through my screw supply and found a smaller screw, a shorter screw, that's going to drop down in this hole and allow me to tighten my pickup ring down without having to worry about going into the wires below it. And here we go. Pickups are installed. The next thing we need to do is we're going to get the wiring harness installed. This is your volume right here. This is your tone. You can tell the difference because the tone has the capacitor. I've got my wires, my ground and my hot wire that will go to my input jack. You can see those are already up and to through the switch, through the volume pot to the 5-way switch. We're just going to feed these up through the holes. So there's my volume and my tone through. So what we're going to do is just going to go ahead and drop the washers on the front here. Not really tightening these at the moment, just kind of snugging them down a little bit. That way it keeps everything from moving around while I'm trying to do the rest of this. There we go. Got those installed there. There we go, switch is installed. All right, so you can see I've got the control pots oriented to where they're nice and the wires can be tucked out of the way. The jack on this one is a barrel type jack. It's going to go all the way through with this rubber washer and a nut that'll screw onto the back side of this. I'm going to check and see which one's hot, which one's ground on this before I solder the connections to it. So that's our jack installed. I do not have it soldered yet, and what I'm going to do from the soldering standpoint is it's just too cramped and crowded in there to actually video me soldering that up. You're just not going to see anything. You'll see the back of my head and my hands in the way because the cavity is so close and so tight that there's really no way to video it soldering it properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and solder all of that off camera, and then once I bring you back on camera, I'll come in with some nice close-ups of it and show you exactly the wire routing that I used and exactly what switch positions I used to wire this switch up. So we've got everything wired up. Now you can see why I really couldn't video this while I was doing the soldering. So first off with the wire harness. The wire harness came with the blue leads and the red leads attached going between the volume pot, the tone pot, the volume pot, and our 5-way switch. Lug 4 is the hot wire coming from the volume. This goes to the volume pot. And then this blue wire here also goes to the volume pot, and that's the ground. The white wire is the hot going to our input jack here, and the black wire is to our ground. And the way I determined that was I just went ahead and stuck a cable into the jack, and then using a multimeter checked for continuity to see which part was the hot, which is the white, and which part was the ground, which is the black. And it was the two short leads, or the two short lugs on the switch itself. What I did, you'll notice I've got this common ground right here. The switches, or the pots are grounded to one another, so that completes the ground between those two. And then the ground coming off of the volume pot and off the lead I ran to here. It's also got the ground for the neck pickup, the ground for the bridge pickup, and the ground for the middle pickup. And then the bridge ground that we installed under the bridge all come into this one grounding point here. And then that goes and is a common ground to these two pots. That way I wasn't continually soldering on the pots and taking a chance of burning a pot up by having too much solder and too much heat on it. For this 5-way switch, what I did is I just went online and found a wiring diagram, and this is an import switch because all the lugs are in a straight line. If it was a non-import switch, there'd be 4 lugs on one side, 4 lugs on the other, but it's still 8 lugs. This first lug here is the neck pickup. The second lug here is our middle, and the third lug goes to our bridge. So that's all wired up nicely, and everything's tucked in and out of the way. I've already set my action up on the bridge to where I've got fairly decent action on the guitar. Basically what I do is after I string it up, I'm going to let this sit for probably a couple weeks before I go through and do my final setup on it. But initial playability is good at the moment. I am going to go ahead and do the intonation on it. That's going to be pretty simple. Basically on this one, as I showed you when I took these saddles off, they slide back and forth with a small set screw. If I have to do any intonation adjustments, and I'll have to do that for sure, because I just set the bridge kind of to a close position to begin with, what I'll have to do is detune the string, loosen the set screw, move the saddle either forward or back depending on which way I need to go, tighten the set screw, and then retune the string, check it again, and I'll just go through that one string at a time to get my intonation set. All right, so let's walk you through what I'll do to intonate. I've got my tuner set up. I'm using a strobe tuner for this, but you can use a normal, if it's got lights on it, you can use it. It's not quite as accurate. Even if it's got the needle, you can use it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check my tune on my string. And notice how the circles around the E are moving clockwise. That's telling me I'm a little bit sharp right there. So if I adjust my tune a little bit, then it gets to stop. That tells me I'm in pitch. Okay, so then what I do is I want to check it at the 12th fret and see how it's moving to the right. That means I'm sharp. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to detune it. I'm going to loosen the set screw. I'm going to move that saddle back, tighten the set screw back down. There we go, back in pitch. Still a little sharp. So basically that's the process. All right, that is going to wrap up this video. My apologies, the camera shut off and I didn't quite catch it in time while I was doing the intonation, so you only got the initial setup of my intonation on how it works. But basically what you do, the rule for intonation, is you tune the string to pitch, and then you fret it at the 12th fret, being careful not to press down too much because you can make it go sharp just by pressing down too much. But fret it at the 12th fret, check it again, and then if it's sharp, if the note is sharp, you want to move the saddle back. If the note is flat, you want to move the saddle forward. So I just want to say thank you very much for stopping by the channel. Please, if you like what I'm doing, click like, click subscribe. That way you can keep up with what I'm doing on the channel. So until next time, thank you very much for stopping by the channel, and take care.